Today's centerpiece is not your average fall centerpiece. I'm skipping the pumpkin spice, the grinning ghosts, and I'm going for something more moody, something darker, spooky even. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm building a community of flower nerds online at FlowerMore. You can find it on my website at ellenfrost.com. Also, subscribe to my free weekly newsletter all about flowers called Flower Nerd. There's a link in the description. So every month in my online community, FlowerMore, we have a design challenge. This month we're leaning into the season and we're creating a dark, moody, spooky, creepy design. I found this vessel, this raven. So the opening of my vessel is sort of wide, so I'm going to use a mechanic inside of there. This is just a piece of chicken wire. A mechanic is just a tool that we use to hold our flowers in place. So this chicken wire is going to help me hold the flowers in place in this low, wide vessel. So first I'm just going to make a little tube of chicken wire by attaching my ends to themselves. And then I'm going to fold the ends in so that it fits inside my vessel. And there's no real special way to get it in. Just make sure that it fits in and your holes on top are not crunched. Be sure to add water to your design when you get started. Don't wait till the end because you might forget and then your flowers will surely die. The next element that is going to help me create a creepy, spooky design, in addition to my vessel, are my flower choices. So I've chosen flowers and foliage that are really dark and textured. I think the star of the show is really going to be these black calla lilies. These black calla lilies are going to be the focal point of my design. They are naturally black. They are not dyed. They're not colored. I got these locally from my friend John McEwen at Locust Point Flowers, and I just love them. He didn't have a lot, so I've got 4. So I'm going to use these in my design. The rest of the elements that I'm going to use today are dark red, dark purple, maroon, burgundy, really to create that deep, dark look. The only thing I want to be careful of is that everything doesn't start to blend in together, because when you're using a more monochromatic color palette, things can tend to blend in together. So I want to just give stuff enough room that you can see every individual flower and every individual piece of foliage. So I'm starting with some smokebush. This is a deep dark red, and I love smokebush. It's one of my favorite fall foliages. It is a woody stem, so if you want, you can give it a cut right up inside the stem. That'll help it take up water. I also want to lean into the shape of this vase a little bit. You can see it's a little asymmetrical, so I want to lean into that shape. The next foliage I'm going to use is 9-bark. 9-bark comes in lots of different shades of green and orange and even this dark, dark reddish black. And it has a lot of great movement, so I'm going to use this to help create lines in my design. Using a Lazy Susan is a great way to make sure that as you're designing, you can see all of the sides without missing any spots. So next I'm going to put in my calla lilies, and I'm going to make sure that they are long enough so that they don't get lost. And I'm even going to leave a little bit of room, a little negative space between my other flowers and these callas, so that, again, they're not blending in too much and that you can really see their shape. I'm going to add my dahlias next. These are a little bit of a, even though they're dark burgundy, they are going to lighten up the design a little bit because of these dark blacks. This actually is going to be a little bit of a pop of color. Next, I'm going to add some of this feather grass. This is going to add a lot of nice texture. It is pretty thin, so I'm going to bunch them together in a little cluster so that I get a little more bang for my buck in terms of interest. I don't want them to feel dotted or one here, one here, one here. I really want them to feel like a cohesive element. I've got a few little pieces of amaranth. These are really small, but I do want to add them just for a little bit of color and a little bit of interest in texture. One of the creepiest elements that I love to use in fall designs are lotus pods. And I know that some people have issues with them. There is actually something called trypophobia, which is a fear of holes. So if you have this, you probably are covering your eyes right now. But these are one of my favorite elements to use in fall designs that are in this deep color palette because they have this really black, sort of dusty gray look to them. All right, I'm loving how it's looking so far. I'm going to add a few more elements. I've got some really dark Scabiosa and another sort of dark red one. So I'm going to use both of these in the design. You can tell that I'm being kind of careful with my positioning and my placement, just because I want to make sure that I am still keeping that negative space and letting there be a lot of room between the flowers so that you can really see them. All right, a couple last things to add to the creepy elements. This, which is a really fun local element called Jewels of Opar. And it's very airy. It has these tiny little red and burgundy and pink balls on them. And what I love to use them for as my last sort of finishing bits and pieces, where I want a little movement and a little bit of whimsy, because even though this is creepy, we still want some movement in the design. All right, I have a few more elements, but I don't think I need a lot more. I do want to include this black pussy willow, which is just too fun to not include. So I'm going to add just a few of these in the back. You could add this early on in your design if you wanted, or you could finish it off with these at the end. The last thing I want to add, which is a special last little element, are some feathers. Since we are using the raven as our vessel, I do want to add a few of these feathers that I have collected. And these are, if you have large feathers, like if you had peacock feathers, that would be awesome. I have some smaller feathers that I'm going to cluster together so that they have a little bit more impact. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to make my cluster, and then I am going to use a little piece of floral tape to tape them together at the bottom. And then I'm going to use a piece of stem wire. This is just a loose gauge stem wire. I'm going to put it right next to my little bouquet and then tape it to the bouquet. And what I'm doing here is just creating a false stem so that I can put these tiny little feathers in just like I would any other element. There is my creepy, spooky, scary raven centerpiece for the fall season. I can't wait to see what the other members of my FlowerMore community create for our challenge this month. If you'd like to join us and create your own spooky, scary, moody design, you can check the link in the description to join my FlowerMore community. And also subscribe to my free weekly newsletter, Flower Nerd.